Hello, friends and haters, everybody out there. Welcome to the behind the scenes of the studio of Carini Arts. Today, I wanted to do a talk on navigating your art business amidst the economic crisis that we're experiencing, rising costs of living, particularly here in San Diego. It is wow, it's quite an obstacle. So I wanted to share my perspective of kind of where I've been and my current struggles and where I'm trying to go and how I'm circumnavigating the situation right now in the hopes that it may help some other people. But I wanted to invite people to share their thoughts on the topic, maybe some of your experiences. But everybody is welcome here. I do these live talks to try to support and encourage other artists while candidly sharing my journey. Life is not always a glorious snapshot like it is portrayed to be on Instagram and Facebook by many people claiming to be influencers. I am definitely not an influencer. I'm just a dude trying to find himself on a journey, and I have hit rock bottom uh, quite a few times. But I think that rock bottom builds a lot of strong people and can really develop your character. So I think it's a great place to come from. And I think that it gives you the tools to provide great advice, even if I don't always follow that advice myself. But do as I say, not as I do. So without further ado, I should say please check out CariniArts.com for my shop, my blog, my podcast. If you want to support my work and what I do, you could always purchase some of my canvas prints, some of my apparel, make a donation. I will send you something for the donation. Know that it goes to my Taco Tuesday fund. And with those half off tacos, I can go twice as far with that couple bucks right now. So I really appreciate the support and all the things that people do to make what I do possible. I do these videos for free, even though I don't always have the resources, because I know what it's like to struggle. I know what it's like to be on the bottom. And there are certain things that I believe, yes, I should charge for as an artist in terms of being a business and taking myself seriously. But there's also things that I think that should be accessible to everybody, and not everybody has the resources. And so that's one of the things that I try to put out there. So rather than kind of become part of what I see to be the problem, I don't want to start charging for those things. I've had a lot of people tell me, "Oh, you should start doing private rooms and stuff like that, and private chats and conversations, and do lectures that you charge for and things like that." And there's times and places where that makes sense. But if I was to do that, if you're somebody that's struggling right now, your thought is going to be, "Oh, just another thing that I can't afford right now, something that can be helpful for me, but I just don't have the resources." And so I get that. And so that is why I try to make it accessible to everybody. But sort of going back in time on my journey, for a long time, I had this thought process that I would reach a certain level of financial stability and then I would move into being a full-time artist. And what I found was that even though I was further along in my career, even though I was technically more successful in many regards, I noticed that cost of living was always increasing, yet my wages were not increasing on a commensurate level that matched. And so a significant period of time passed that allowed me to have a large sample size. And I noticed that it seemed like I was going backwards in life. And I thought, well, how can I address this? What can I do? And so I thought, well, one of the things I can do as an artist is I can try to maybe minimize my overhead a little bit. So I was doing a lot of events back in the day. I was dumping a lot of money into things. And I do believe that if you're going to dump money into anything, you should dump money into yourself. You should invest in yourself, because if you're not willing to invest in yourself, why should somebody else? Now, conversely, I understand there may be times that you don't believe in yourself and somebody else does believe in you. And believe me, the power of that ability to bolster you can be extremely impactful. And I think there's tremendous value to that, but we can't always depend on somebody else to pick us up. I have been blessed to have people that helped me along my journey, but there have been times that I had to learn to pick myself up. And so I thought by minimizing my overhead and just living a simpler life, maybe not dumping quite as much money into certain events or paying more attention into profits and losses, where I was really losing money, and maybe how I could shift that money into other things was tremendously beneficial. Now, the other thing that I decided to do early on was student loans. So those are an absolute killer. And I had to put myself through school, went to a private university. So I had a large amount of student loans when I finished undergraduate school. Now, what I decided to do was to pay them off early because I noticed when I had made payments for a couple years that it didn't seem like anything was going down in regards to my principal balance. It was basically just me paying interest. And I thought, what the hell? Like, I'm paying this money and this number is not going down whatsoever. So I said, I got to find a way to get rid of this. Now, in hindsight, what I would do is I would try to completely avoid student loans at any and all cost. But I didn't know what I didn't know at the time. So, and that's one of the reasons I do these videos is to share my experience, share my thoughts. So I said, well, the first thing I need to do is I need to buy my freedom in a manner of speaking. And so for a long time, rather than buy anything nice, I took all the money that I had saved up and I decided to pay off my student loans. So I paid off huge, huge chunks. And I managed to ultimately pay them off 10 years early with the money that I made off of my art. And it's one of my favorite stories to share because I didn't just do it for me. I kind of did it at the same time to be able to share the story and to tell people about it because I thought, hey, people are going to feel like you're pigeonholing, like they're never going to get out of this scenario. And if I can share that I was able to pay off those student loans 10 years early, it'll give some people some hope that are trapped in that scenario too. So know that it is possible. And I did do it with the money that I made off of my art. It was the bigger sales that I made off the art. And it was that money set aside directly from the art that paid off the student loans. So this thing that people told me I would never be able to make any money off of, that is what ultimately paid off the student loans. Now, the other thing I decided to do was to pay off my car. So paid off my car early. That was out of the way. So I figured student loans out of the way, car out of the way. Right there, that was around $900 less a month that I needed to make, and when you factor in taxes and that, so really, that's closer to you having to earn around $1,400 less a month, which is a huge, huge amount. And so that I felt gave me this a little bit of breathing room to be able to kind of move forward with the plan. And so 2019 came around, and that's when I said, you know what? Even though I paid off my student loans, even though I paid off my car, I still seem to be going backwards. Why am I going backwards? I've been in the same industry since I finished school in 2006. So 13 years, was making less money somehow ultimately, yet my cost of living was going up. I've lived in the same apartment since I finished school too. So that whole period that I had that job, living in the same apartment. So when I moved in, it was one rate. And then by 2019, it was about one and a half times the cost of what it was when I had moved in, even though it had nothing new in it. So I was essentially paying more for what I had already had, but just older. Like, what was it, vintage now? Did I live in a vintage apartment, so therefore it costs more? So it doesn't really make sense all the time, but that was the scenario, and you got to work with what you got to work with. It just is what it is sometimes, and that's kind of where it is now. So going back though to 2019, so I reached a point where I said, you know what? I'm absolutely miserable at my job because that's what it was, a job. It had this illusion of security, and that's all it was. It was an illusion. I thought, oh well, there's the potential to have a 401k, and I'll have a good healthcare plan, and I'll be able to have regular wages coming in, and I'll be able to have time to do my art. But I was so burned out that I rarely had the time that I really needed to do my art. So yeah, I did it. I made stuff happen. I still did shows. I still worked with galleries. I was still technically a professional artist. I had a business license, so I had been operating as an artist on the books. So professional artist by all standards. So that kind of goes to the topic that I covered yesterday here on YouTube of, does working another job make you any less of an artist? And so you can go check out that talk if you want to find out more about my thoughts on that. But I decided, I said, you know what? I'm just losing my soul working this job that's not meant for me, because you're either working for your dream or you're working for somebody else's dream. And I realized that I was giving way too much of my time to somebody else's dream. And so at that time, I didn't have a lot of money saved up. I had very little. I had almost nothing. But I said, you know what? It's this job that put me here at this point of having almost nothing. It didn't propel me forward in life. And so I said, you know what? If I'm going to have nothing, and I'm going to go out of my shield. Maybe I even die. I'm going to do it going after what I want. I'm going to be doing it going after my passion, my calling, what I was put here on this earth to do, because I was not put here on this earth to work a customer service menial job sitting behind a desk. And if that is your calling, if that's what you enjoy doing, there's nothing wrong with that. But it was not meant for me. That was not what I was put here to do. I knew what I was put here to do. And the fact that I knew what I was put here to do and I wasn't doing it, it made it all the more painful and excruciating to deal with, where it felt like every single day my soul was just being sucked out of me to the point that I had nothing left. I was ready to give up. So I quit my job with almost nothing. And it took a while to get on my feet, but I was able to make it happen. So fast forward to early 2020, things were going pretty well. I had finally managed to get a little bit of stability, not a lot, but a little bit of stability. Things were working, and then the pandemic hit. And then there's this scenario of having to navigate that because so many things were closed. But luckily, I had already quit my job. I was already working from home. And I found that a lot of people were looking for comfort. And so, by doing a lot of live feeds at that time, by sharing my work, there were a lot of people in front of their monitors at that time, even more so than normal. So, I actually did really well with the online stuff during 2020. Then 2021 came around and a lot of that started to die off and it got real slow. And so I had to revisit a lot of things that I said that I wouldn't do again or that I didn't want to do or that didn't work for me. And I just had to come about it and view it from a different perspective. So I started working on more sources of secondary or passive income, including licensing relationships where I get royalties. So I worked on a couple of those. I started reestablishing relationships with some galleries, which is something that I had steered away from for a while because I was just kind of doing it on my own. I was doing all the fairs and festivals and shows that I was just putting on myself. And I had said for a while, I said, I'm not going to work with the gallery again because they take 50% generally, and it just hasn't worked for me in the past. But I came about it with a new approach where I said, hey, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to do it. I'm going to kind of dictate the terms and just make sure that it's a mutually beneficial relationship. Because if it's mutually beneficial, then I am all for it. I am totally cool and want to take care of the people that take care of me. But there has to be this degree of balanced reciprocity for it to work for both parties. And so I was able to establish these new relationships with a couple galleries that are doing well for me right now. Now, again, they're not covering all the stuff that I need to cover in life, but they are definitely moving me in the right direction and they are helping me with visibility and traction while I'm also continuing to do things on my own because I set that boundary and that standard and dictated the terms of my relationships or made sure that they work for me before signing the contract. Because as I've gotten older in life and gotten more experience, I've become more comfortable with asking, not even asking necessarily, but demanding what I want. And if it doesn't work for both parties, being able to just walk away from it. It's too bad I can't do that with personal relationships, but hey, one thing at a time. And with the business relationships, I'm very good at that. So I'll take what I can get. So 2022, and we're still dealing with the pandemic. And my assistant slash roommate decides to leave, and that right there is like $1,000 lost a month, and you factor in what you would actually have to earn pre-tax, and it's more like $1,500. So like that's a $1,500 swing right there. And so people say, well, why don't you just get another roommate? So for me, this is a very difficult thing. I am neurodivergent and I am very particular about a lot of things. I've lived in the same apartment for 15 years. I don't like change. I like consistency. I like things that are clean. I don't like to be around people that are partying or drinking or that are loud. I like to have my own workspace. I have 3 cats, and I'm very, very sensitive, to say the least, to put it nicely, about making sure the door is closed at all times, about not bringing pathogens into the house that could potentially make my cat sick, give me vet bills that I can't afford because number of years ago, I had a $10,000 vet bill right after I lost my job, and I thought that was going to make me homeless. But I give everything that I have, my all my energy into what I love, and that's my animals. But I try to control my circumstances as much as I can. But these days, we can't control all that much, can we? So my roommate leaves, and so I look into potentially getting another roommate. But I realize that until I can find the right roommate, the neuroticism and anxiety caused by having the wrong person here would make me sick. it would put me down a very dark path that would be more damaging than helpful. And so I've gone a pretty good period of time without a roommate, and it has required me to dump a lot more money into this. Now, because I am registered as a business, I do get to write certain things off as business expenses. So I have since turned that room into a studio space, and I'm able to write off a portion of my living space. So that's one thing is again minimizing overhead and managing expenses and being able to write off certain things. So being calculated in your purchases and where you're shifting your money. So that is why I love to work from home, is that I get to write off a percentage of my home office as a tax expense. So again, a CPA and a bookkeeper are great expenses that are worthwhile for you as an artist because they can help guide you on that tax journey that you may not know how to handle or may not want to handle. Now, I'm good with numbers, but I still believe in delegating when it makes sense because time is money. And so all the time that I'm not spending making art or marketing my work, because nobody's going to market my work harder than me, nobody's going to market my work better than me, because it's my dream. It's not somebody else's dream. So hiring somebody else to do that, I've tried that before. I've tried the advertising in Facebook and Instagram. And for me personally, I didn't like it. It didn't work for me. And I think that it didn't work for me is because so many people buy my work based off of connection. And when you're marketing, a lot of times when people see that sponsored tag, they will scroll right by it simply for the reason that it says sponsored. Now, when people come to you organically, they're more invested, they're more interested, they want to be there, they chose to be there. Those are the people that are going to support you. So I figured focus more on building things organically. So if advertising works for you, nothing wrong with that. But for me personally, not really the right choice. So that's why I haven't got a roommate yet. And people have said, well, why don't you move out of San Diego? And it kind of goes back to the same thing. I do have a degree of rent control because I've lived in the same place for 15 years, but my apartment is coming up on costing twice as much as when I moved in for just being older. So again, wow, this vintage apartment is going to be priceless sooner than later. And I have just never really had the resources or the comfort to be able to invest in property or a house because I'm a single income. And as an artist, there are sometimes days, weeks, maybe even months where I make almost $0. $0. And now, as somebody that's neurodivergent and really into numbers and overthinks things, having $0 come in can really mess with your head and F with you. But there's times that I can sell a big piece and that big piece can float me for months. So I've had to kind of learn to relax a little bit and to understand the context of the situation. So again, as an artist, you're going to have to understand that context of things, and you're going to have to think about ways to supplement your income with passive income, secondary sources, little things to supplement the big picture. So big paintings, multiple paintings, large sales, those are the real, that's the feast. But I've found ways to sort of snack at the same time by doing smaller pieces, by offering prints, and then those secondary sources of income. So that's how I'm kind of trying to navigate that. So, and then I did in the past couple months, still in the midst of the pandemic, get hit with a rent increase. And now here in San Diego, we have SDG&E, San Diego Gas and Electric, where for some reason gas and electric costs on bills has risen for some people like 4 or 5 times the cost that it normally was. My cable bill, which cable is like the one thing that's like my comfort because I love to just go watch The Office or my different shows on TV. That is my comfort. That is something that I feel that you don't necessarily need it per se, but it is a very important comfort for me. It's the one thing that helps relax me. So that went up like $100 for me. Cost of food has gone up tremendously, and I'm not a great cook, so sometimes I have to pick stuff up or use a meal prep service because I do try to cook the few things that I can, but I just don't really know how to do that. And then going back into the idea of time and economy of motion and balancing those and just knowing what you're good at and knowing when to delegate. The other things that I've been dealing with are costs of goods for supplies. Now, cost of lumber has gone up dramatically, so my canvas costs for my upcoming show have gone up dramatically, and even accessibility to them because the supply chain has become a major obstacle. So, again, I'm curious what things you have noticed or what things you have run into, what obstacles you are having as an artist or managing your art business and your thoughts on them, what you're doing to work around it, or if you're looking for guidance on it, share your thoughts, share your comments, and maybe we can have somebody on here provide some guidance. So those are some of the things that I'm currently navigating and trying to figure out. I have had some small things come in. I'm trying to work on more commissions. I've shifted to bodies of work that I really enjoy doing, things that I wanted to do, but I thought would be a little bit more marketable. So I'm not selling out. I'm still making the work I want to make. In fact, I really wanted to make this work even more. So it's great that this work is really taking off more than anything that I've done, but still, there's no guarantee. And as much as I want to think that art is a necessity, people will often buy other things first. Food, make sure that the rent is paid, cover the bills, all that stuff before they will invest in the art. And I'm trying to find ways to navigate that. There's always somebody out there, no matter what the economical climate, there's somebody out there that's willing to buy art. I just need to find them. So I look at it as an obstacle, but a challenge. And I have to be creative in finding a solution to this problem. So that's what I'm trying to do, because in the past couple months alone, my cost of living has bumped up the equivalent of around $2,500. And I think that based on your overhead, that really kind of determines whether or not that's a significant amount. Your profits, your losses, your margins, things like that. Now, for me, that's a huge, huge amount, because I, over the past couple of years, tried to live a very modest, simple life. Don't buy anything fancy. If I spend money on things, it's basically food or things for my cats or art supplies or investing in marketing materials, things like that to help my business grow. So it's usually investing money in myself. So when I say $2,500 increase, that is huge for me because I do live such a simple life. But everything is relative. And so we have to have that context and that perspective. So maybe yours has bumped up $250 and it's crippling you, or maybe it's bumped up $10,000 and it's not a big deal. So I'm curious. I want to hear other people's thoughts, other people's experiences, but I figured that I would come on here and share my own. So I hope you have a good day. Stay safe, be well, keep fighting the good fight. And as I said earlier today, if you are single in San Diego, don't worry, because rent, gas, and SDG&E will F you. So there you go. Check out CariniArts.com for my shop, my blog, my podcast. If I am of any help to you, please consider leaving $3 for my burrito fund. So next Taco Tuesday, I can hit that up. So again, part of me managing things is yesterday, Taco Tuesday, half off tacos. So I can go twice as far with my money. And then AMC Theaters, as a Stubbs member, it's only $6.50. Plus I had $2 left on the gift card that my family sent me for Christmas. So $4.50 to go to the movies. So just trying to be smart about things. Free Museum Tuesdays here in San Diego. So a lot of the museums are free on Tuesdays on a rotating basis. So sometimes you just got to get creative in what you do and how you deal with things. So I'm doing my best. I'm fighting the good fight, but let me know what you think. See you next time. CariniArts.com.